like. So we are recording. All right. Great. So I guess let's start with just round of check-ins right now. What's the impact looking for like your organization? What's on your mind? What's just maybe starting with Michael Healy.
Well, then the small circle of my life, things are grand. So everybody's healthy and doing well. The work that I'm doing with co-ops, it's been interesting that obviously everybody is top of mind, dealing with COVID, but the boards that I'm working with, they still have other stuff they're paying attention to also. So my distance virtual work continues on, but my in-person work where I travel to be with clients, that is ground to a halt. And so sometime put into, okay, so how do we regroup? How do we rethink either virtual things instead of in-person things, or how do we postpone? So that's what we're working with right now. None of it's bad, just a little different.
Great, thank you. Nico, do you want to go next? And
Sure. Hi, everyone. It just feels like it's been a lot of work lately, trying to support the community and our clients at the firm. I work with Dunkiel Saunders, and we've spent a lot of time doing kind of the regular client service work that we do, as well as getting up to speed on the rapid changes of law. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Nico. Joe, how's the Association of Vermont Credit Unions and credit union land in general holding?
The Association of Vermont Credit Unions is okay. We're able to fortunately all work remotely, or not without, like all of us, some inconveniences and some bumps in the road, but it's working anyway. The land of credit unions is a different story. That's where all the challenges are and everything. Financial services is deemed an essential service, right? Like food and auto repair and so on and so forth. And there are so many nooks and crannies that, and I'm sure you've all encountered it too, but so many nooks and crannies that, none of us really contemplated before of this virus touching aspects of credit union operations and the way people deal with credit unions and conduct their financial services and whatnot. So it's been like go, go, go nonstop, almost 24 hours a day, especially in the past couple of days with the whole Paycheck Protection Program that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So lots of research, lots of teleconferences like this. And when this is all over, if I never have to be on another teleconference ever in my life, I'll be okay with that.
Hear that. All right, Andrew, do you want to go next, and I'll take notes while you talk.
Sure. There's a couple of y'all that I may have not met or just briefly met, but I work for New Frameworks Construction. We've obviously shut down, well, not necessarily, obviously some construction is continuing, but we've shut down all of our job sites, continued our design and consulting side of things, picked up a little bit more consulting work. We're in a decent place financially to keep going for a while, not lay anyone off or anything like that. Yeah, just adapting to it, trying to take care of our people and our communities and stay healthy and happy.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Elias, want to go next?
I'm Elias from the New School of Montpelier, and our students coming to school, but they are at home looking for things to do. So we're sort of scrambling to provide computers for them and make sure they have internet, how to get on. And at this point, we've got classes up and running. We offer pretty much a full day of schoolwork for students and families that want that. And we're trying to find out if the school districts are going to continue paying us for that, because they haven't made commitments after today. So really know what we're doing with our at the moment.
Thank you, Elias. Kevin, how's Catamount Solar holding up?
We're okay. It's been, really challenging. Like Andrew said, solar work in the state is officially shut down, although there may still be some of our competitors out there working. We're not sure, but we're not supposed to be, and we're okay with that. Internally, we're trying to figure out and the biggest problem, for any business is the uncertainty and not knowing how long this is going to go on. We're trying to figure out, we've kept everybody on through this week for a full 40 hours. We're kind of thinking we've got cash, but, we don't want to spend it all, and, be completely flat footed when things open up. So we're thinking we're going to put people, at least half the company, on unemployment, probably starting next week for April, and then hopefully access the PPP money for May and June, and that's kind of our strategy. Hopefully it works. We'll see. For myself, we've had a whole series of meetings, both with the members and with the whole company, and I've had just a crazy couple of weeks, both dealing with the crisis and finances and strategies. But we actually, we've got work, and there's a big RFP, a big Velco RFP that we just got a proposal in today for, that would really give a nice piece of work once this opens up, if we're lucky to get it. But putting those together is extremely time consuming. And I told my my colleagues, I don't think I've worked this hard since starting the company, 60, 70 hours a week, the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's been crazy.
Thanks for sharing and being
I'm
here.
tired.
Okay, Kevin. David, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dave from Woodbelly Pizza. We are feeling pretty fortunate right now that this so far has affected our catering season not all that much. We've had some cancellations and a lot of postponements, but it looks like we're going to come out of it in a pretty good position. We had been, until this payroll protection program information came out, sort of trying to figure out what work was really absolutely essential and what we could put off. We've now decided, since we are going to be applying for payroll protection, that we will probably just keep pushing forward, doing the work that needs to be done to get us ready for the season when it happens. And we may even push some other projects forward that would have been delayed by a busy catering season to get started sooner. We have enough cash right now with deposits and retained revenue from last year, so we're not super concerned, but we are planning to apply for payroll protection just so that we can keep as many people working as much as possible right now.
Thank you, Dave. Mark is here also from Dunkiel Saunders Market. Nico gave us a little update. Anything you'd like to add?
Sorry, I just joined. I didn't hear Nico's update. She didn't have us going down in flames yet, I presume. So that way, I think we're plugging along. The remote experience, I think, has been going along fine. But yeah, I've also been exploring this whole payroll protection. Spent a fair amount of time today on that, just both from our perspective and also from trying to be responsive to clients who have questions about it. There's a lot of uncertainty about its implementation still at this point. But if it actually gets implemented the way it's been described, it could be just a great program for a lot of businesses. Could make the difference between retaining people or not, which I think everybody wants to do in the long run. So both to make people's lives better, but also continue the businesses on the best footing as we hopefully come to the other end of this awful experience.
Thank you, Mark. And so quick update kind of on my end, and then we can kind of go to Lane and have Lane provide us a little CFNE update. But so for Vermont Employee Ownership Center, we have pretty much circled in on. We believe we're going to move our annual conference to. We were talking, going back and forth, and we're going to make the final call on Monday. But it's looking like we're going to bump it back to August 18th from June 11th, which was the kind of the current date. So we'll be putting some stuff out about that in the near future. Again, sort of also kind of trying to research and understand as much as possible about what's going on, and doing some thinking around what does it look like to start getting a trickle of inquiries from folks in terms of business owners who don't want to sort of like put the debt or personal resources in restarting their businesses, but their employees have some interest. So that's kind of the sort of conversion that we don't normally see or pursue, but given the circumstances, I think that's going to be something we're putting some more headspace into in the near future. On other co-ops I'm involved with, update the Oak Street Co-op project. We signed a extension on the purchase and sale agreement that we had in place, so that's been kind of on pause, and will continue to be on pause for the next month. Full Barrel Co-op project, we've been having virtual happy hours every Friday, so I'm going to be going to that after this and drinking some hard cider and chatting with people. But generally, there's a lot of kind of conversation around in a few of these things around like what is community-driven sort of financial interventions on behalf of kind of potential conversions look like. So some interesting thoughts on that front. But looks like we might be applying for the PPP money as a nonprofit. So we've been sort of trying to wrap our heads around that a little bit as well. So that's in that conversation too. And Lane, yeah, I know you have time limited. So do you want to give us a kind of quick update, just both how CFNE is doing and any kind of key things you want to share from
Sure.
the fund?
Yeah. Sorry I was late. I was on the phone with Andrew's coworker over at New Frameworks, who also just called me back. So I really appreciated the timing of this, that the folks who were current borrowers of mine all shared while I was able to listen. So thanks, Matt, for lining that up. I'm Lane. I'm with the Cooperative Fund of New England, for those of you who I don't know. So the Paycheck Protection Program information that came out today, the regulations are such that the Cooperative Fund of New England cannot participate in the program as it currently stands. Yeah, it's possible that it will get expanded, because they do need to actually bring more lenders in order to have, my understanding is, in order to have enough money to actually lend, they need to expand beyond the current 7A lenders. But as it currently stands, CFNE is not eligible, and it actually, through our interpretation, looks like some of the other local lenders who I had thought I was going to be referring folks to may also not be eligible yet as well, and they're putting applications through right now. I also, what Ace just called me back to share about, because the 3 community banks that I referred him to call, 2 of them said we're only serving current customers right now because the volume's so high. So hopefully on Monday, Northfield Savings Bank will be able to take applications for PPP programs in from other folks. And Community National said, sure, absolutely, someone will call you back. We're just really busy. So who knows if that's the case. So if other people have folks who they know they're applying for who are open to other PPP applications, I'd love to hear, because we certainly have more people who are looking to apply. I'm really right now just trying to collect that information and be sure to get that out to folks as much as possible. So yeah, currently that's the status of things. We'll have more information on Monday about what our potential path to becoming a Paycheck Protection Program lender is. And in the meantime, our own emergency loan program is still open for anybody who's looking for bridging funds between now and when that Paycheck Protection Program application might go through, or if folks are waiting on EIDL funds as well. We definitely are, our emergency loan program isn't as patient terms as the SBA programs are, but we can actually underwrite your application in a pretty short turnaround time as opposed to some of these other programs. So for anyone who's in a short-term cash crunch. I think that's all from me for now. And then the other piece is that we've also just been amassing as many resources as possible that are available on our website, and also have been doing the best to make sure that all of our outreach staff is as versed as possible. So if people have specific questions as you're trying to navigate things, I'm really available for anybody to get in touch to talk through how you're doing your cash flow management, what you're thinking about in terms of applying for stuff. So feel free to be in touch. And as Matt mentioned, I actually have another call that I was supposed to be on, so I'm gonna actually hop off already. Thanks for coordinating, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Lane. And that feels like a good segue to, Joe, it sounded like you've been PPP all the time this week. So are there any kind of things that from your perspective and the credit union world sort of that we should be aware of as this kind of all starts ramping up?
So, my focus on this has been mostly from, as a trade association, from the lender side, trying to get clarification for our credit unions as to, how this program is or was or whatever going to work for them and whatnot as lenders. And we have, out of 19, really 20 credit unions operating in the state, there are 5 or 6 that are already or have been regular SBA 7A lenders, traditional lenders. And so what Lane was referencing about other entities being able to participate, the first, this whole payroll protection program has been very frustrating from a credit union land standpoint. And I've had a ton of teleconferences on this week. And the frustrating part has been that, and I know there's urgency about helping out small businesses and whatnot, but the announcement of it was kind of like a cart before the horse thing, in that you've got people in state and federal government agencies that are talking about this payroll protection program and giving out details from a small business perspective about how beneficial it is, which is all very true, and it is very beneficial and everything. And they're saying, if you own a small business, you need to go see your financial institution and apply right away. I even heard someone on a teleconference or a video conference, press conference yesterday say, and you'll walk out with a check right away and everything, which isn't true. But meanwhile, financial institutions did not have guidance from the SBA/Treasury until we got it like at 6 o'clock or so last night, as Lane referenced. And then we had to go through and analyze it and study, try to understand it. And there's more questions, not as many. It's a vast improvement, but there's still more hanging out there. Some institutions, as Lane referenced, had taken applications all this week. We've had credit unions that have been pummeled with inquiries and applications from some small businesses all of this week already. There are a lot of small banks throughout the country and credit unions that have already submitted applications. And earlier in the week, what's today, Friday, maybe it was Wednesday or so, the SBA put out a sample application. I don't know if it intended that application to be used or not, but a lot of lenders had their prospective borrowers fill out that application, and they were submitting that form through their traditional systems with the SBA. And today, our understanding from the SBA is, no, everything's got to be on this new form. So go back and tell your applicants to, do everything over again on this different form. So you can imagine how well that's going to go over with people. There's also a lot of apprehension. There's from financial institutions overall in terms of, you don't want to get this wrong. These loans are, the underwriting that the financial institution has to do for these loans is very limited and very simple. So there's not a lot of research like in a traditional business loan that the bank or credit union is going to be doing. They're just going to basically take the applicant's word for it. They're going to collect a few documents and so on and so forth and get it into the system, and away we go. But still there's not a ton of guidance on that. And so it's not presented in the normal, dot the I's and cross the T's kind of fashion because of the urgency of it all and everything. So you've got some financial institutions that are sitting back saying, I'm waiting for more detailed guidance. But in the meantime, you got other institutions, funneling tons of applications in because it's a first come, first served basis. And $350 billion sounds like a lot of money. But just on this phone call, we had 4 or 5 people already reference, hey, we're going to look at that, or we're going to submit an application and whatnot. So crank that out over, all the small businesses across the country. You can see 350 billion doesn't go very far. So we're of the belief that nothing to substantiate it, but we believe that there will be another round of funding in phase 4 of stimulus bill that comes out whenever that happens. Leadership in the Senate has said we're not ready to talk about that, but leadership in the House has already been working on it, that and other pieces of phase 4 stimulus. So, I don't know if there's going to be, more bickering that goes on legislatively on that whole process and whatnot, but, we have to expect it, I assume. So anyway, it's just been, in everybody's urgency to get dollars into the hands of small business as quickly as possible. There's just been a fair amount of miscommunication or a lack of time for whether it's the SBA or the Treasury or anybody else to crank out details and whatnot and think of all the possible scenarios and questions and whatnot that financial institutions have. And I don't know if it's true today. Yesterday, you had some very large banks nationwide that were saying, no, we're not going to be doing this because there's not enough information for us yet today, and maybe it's a different story. Some people I've heard say yesterday that, the 3 applications are starting to come in, well, officially at midnight tonight, I think, is when the SBA claimed that the application process was going to start. But truthfully, applications have been submitted, for days now, even though some of them may have to be done over again. So I heard some forecasts yesterday that there's $350 million, because it's first come, first served, would all be allocated or spoken for in applications by Monday or Tuesday. And then others have said, no, there's too many institutions that aren't, they have too many questions still, and they won't be jumping on board until next week sometime. So who knows? And Lane's reference to the SBA needing other institutions to get this money out to, besides the ones that are already registered SBA lenders, is very true. And so I know that for credit unions and banks, if you're federally insured, which in Vermont everybody is, there's this streamlined process. Again, they've been talking about it for a week, but we didn't get any details of it until last night. So there's a separate form that non-SBA participating banks and credit unions and other entities can fill out and send it in. And just the act of filling it out and sending it in means you're approved and you're good to go. You're not waiting for any action, which is a good thing. The bad thing is the form's not available, or it wasn't earlier today anyway. It wasn't posted online yet. So it's stuff like that that has generated a lot of frustration. And, credit unions calling me yesterday and the day before saying, I've got tons of people asking about this payroll protection program. We're telling them about it, but they want to apply, they want to do the form and so on and so forth. And, it's been risky trying to do that. I don't mean financially, but in terms of you don't want to go back to people after they've completed their application. Tell them, well, you got to do it all over again on a different piece of paper or a different way or so on and so forth. I've also heard stories where just this morning in a phone call with the Vermont SBA director and our commissioner of Department of Financial Regulation and some of Senator Leahy's office, even in Vermont, we've got stories of small business owners who I guess are sensitive to the fact that it's first come, first served. There'll be a flood of businesses going for this, rightfully so. So they're filing the same application with multiple financial institutions in hopes that one of them will stick, so to speak. So the program allows you as a business to be approved once, to get whatever the loan is going to be for your business one time through one lender. But you know, some are, it's kind of like the toilet paper scenario. You know, when you send your application to, you know, 4 or 5 different places, it's going to clog up the system and whatnot. You know, somebody at the SBA is going to be looking at multiples of these. And so I don't know if they've contemplated having some system in place to be able to identify, hey, this business already submitted an application 4 other times, you know, this afternoon or yesterday or whatnot. So we'll just act on one of them. So there's a lot of details like that still hanging out there. From the borrower perspective, I see Lane is still on the line, and she probably knows us more and more about this than I do. My really rough understanding, and maybe all of you that already checked into it are familiar with this, and Lane, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. My vague recollection is that a business can, there's no collateral involved. There's no a promise to pay by the owner. Well, it's promise to pay, but no personal collateralization or any of that kind of stuff. You just have to attest that the information that you provide on the form, and it is a pretty streamlined form, the one I looked at anyway, that is true and valid, and the financial institution is going to take your word for it. The loan first was going to be for 10 years. That's what we were hearing, at 0% interest. But then it got moved to 0.5% for 2 years. And then there was fear that the largest financial institutions in the country weren't going to participate because the rate of interest wasn't going to be attractive enough for them. So the way it came out last night is 1%. Have I got that right, Lane? 1% for 2 years. You can apply and get all of those funds back if you keep all of your employees on payroll, which for most people is the reason you're borrowing this money anyway. You can use it for other purposes, but the other purposes that you use it for, such as paying your rent if you have office space or utilities, or and I think there's some aspect of it that allows you to pay off, to use it to pay other SBA loans off, or the interest on SBA loans or something like that. So you can do all of those things. You'll get 100%, assuming you keep those employees employed. You'll get 100% of the payroll for employees of $100,000 or less. You'll get that back, but you only get 25% of the back of the amounts that, or waived rather, of the amounts that you used for rent and utilities and those kinds of things, inventories and whatnot. And I think the amount that you can get is limited to $10 million at most, 2.5 times the average monthly payroll, whatever that is for you, exempting or excluding anyone who makes on payroll that makes over $100,000. So I can see where this is very attractive and a great deal for, you know, most every small business out there. I fear that between the people that are clogging the system by applying all over the place to try to maximize their opportunity, their chance of getting a loan in the system, an application in the system, and those that apply who probably don't need it, that these dollars are going to go really fast, and it's going to get, the system is going to get really bogged down. I don't know, Lane, I see you're still online. Anything else you'd throw out from a borrower perspective that is a key point?
No, I think you've really covered it, and the kind of details are going to come out for each individual in terms of how you're managing your own cash flow and when it's the most opportune moment for you to be applying, because it's applied over an 8-week period. So it's really going to depend for each individual. I really appreciate the background information. That's why I stayed on, is because you did such a good job of giving that overview, Joe. So, yeah.
So before we get into other legal considerations, I figure this would be a good time for any kind of questions for Joe or Lane. You know, one that I was just on that came up that I wasn't sure about was from the lender side. I guess there's two here. One is simply that the interest is, you know, that 1%, is the interest forgivable, and is that the only sort of compensation to the lender? So that's the kind of, like, you know, what, aside from, you know, civic mindedness, what incentivizes the lender? And then the other thing is just in terms of, you know, our financial institutions, if this is going to be a huge pile of money all going out the door, is there going to be that's coming from the you know, deposits of these financial institutions? Is there going to be any kind of constriction or bottleneck in terms of just like those financial institutions having the cash on hand to actually make the loans before they're forgiven?
So my understanding is that of that, so the 1% is the revenue on the loan. They've eliminated a lot of the usual fees that go back and forth between the lender and the SBA in normal programs. So I believe it's as simple as there's this three-tier or 3 levels of compensation to the financial institution for making these loans, and it's a small percent of so for loans of $350,000 up to $350,000, it's 1% or a percent, a piece of the 1%, and then for loans of 350 to I don't know what, some bigger number.
Yeah, so up to 350, it's 5%. For 350
Okay.
2 million, it's 3%, and over 2 million, it's 1%.
Right. And so the financial institution, you know, stands to make some money off these loans. They for their handling of it and whatnot. The loans are saleable in the secondary market. So a financial institution that makes it one of these any of these loans, they are saleable in the secondary market. I don't know what the market's going to be for them. They are guaranteed by the SBA. So if you don't, so long as the financial institution does it right and they're convinced that they've done it right, according to whatever nebulous standards the SBA puts out for this, then there's no loss to the financial institution if you as a borrower decide not to pay. So that's good, that there's a big incentive there for financial institutions to do this. What else? Financial institutions themselves cannot be borrowers on this program, as we understand it so far anyway. So some small credit union who may not be positioned to be a lender, or a small bank who may not be positioned to be a lender, but has the same kind of payroll challenges everybody else does, keeping its doors open at this time and its employees employed, is not going to be eligible to participate in this program so far anyway, unless Congress changes something in the next round of funding.
Nonprofits are eligible though, so I mean, which
Yes,
mentioned,
right.
you know, VEOC is considering applying, so that also is adding, I think, to this backlog and the run on the banks that are eligible right now instead of every nonprofit. The other question you asked, Matt, was if the interest is forgiven, which I believe the answer is no.
Okay.
But
and then the other one was just around, you know, in terms of the actual cash on hand that financial institutions have, is there any concern that will be a bottleneck in terms of getting, you know, being able to meet that 350 billion or more, kind of getting that money out the door?
I haven't heard that from anybody.
Okay. Other questions that folks have about this particular topic before I toss it to Nico?
I have a question. I'm Jim Mendel, Common Ground Center, which is a cooperatively run nonprofit in Starksboro. My question is, if do the staff have to be fully paid, or can they work part-time and still qualify?
I believe they have to be at 75% of their previous year pay rate.
Oh,
So they have to be maintained at least 75%. And anybody who dips below that would then, their portion would not be, any portion that was used towards their payroll would not be considered eligible.
Just to quickly clarify, a follow-up question on that. They could be part-time so long as the hours of employment don't change more than 75%. Is that correct?
That I don't know the specifics of that. Yeah, but I thought it was relative to their pay rate.
Yeah, and it's an average pay rate over that a month period. So if you do have a current employee or an employee that's been working for you for 20 hours a week at a part-time rate, so long as you keep them at or near that amount, then you would be able to cover the payroll for them.
right.
And I'm really not very knowledgeable on unemployment, but aren't there some changes to unemployment too, and some additional federal funds that came by way of the state that provide some added benefit or something?
I think we'll get into that in just a second. But if there's any other PPP specific questions, and then I figure we'll toss that to Nico. So Kevin.
Yeah, quick question. I know Elaine and I were talking about this the other day, but maybe there's been some more guidance that's come out regarding the 8-week period and how flexible it is to the borrower. I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, you can claim it backwards because you've already achieved some losses, so you could have your 8-week period start in mid-March or whatever." But I guess it depends on how long it's going to take to get these loans underwritten and out the door. But if for somebody like myself who was thinking like, well, probably it's best if it starts, in early May. And is that user definable, or is it sort of just up to when the loan gets underwritten and finalized? That's when your 8 weeks is going to start, like the next day.
I can't say that I know that, but doesn't this all, I know this all wraps up by the end of June, I think it is.
Right.
But I don't know about, maybe Lane does, but I don't, if you can pick and choose, where you make your little window of time.
Yeah. And what about, has there been more guidance about the documentation for, how you justify your payroll? Is there anything specific required, or is it up to you and your lender's relationship? And
this document that I linked that I sent in the link has it's a 31-page document that you may not want to read all of, but there is a section on what do borrowers need to know.
Okay.
That part goes into some greater detail about how that payroll cost is calculated.
Okay.
I just copy pasted the link into the notes doc here.
I was going to say regarding the forgiveness period, it's the 8-week period that begins after the loan origination date, which that's a question of when that's going to be. I mean, I don't think we necessarily control that. We as potential borrowers.
So you control when you submit your application, right?
Yes.
But if you don't submit your application quickly, then it's an odds game, right?
Yes.
Are all those funds going to be allocated already?
Right. Even submitting, let's say, you're first in line, when the origination date's going to be, I don't know. The assumption was it was going to be quickly.
I think it is going to be quickly.
Yeah.
Although we don't, maybe next week, Monday, we'll start finding out answers to what remaining unanswered questions there are, like we've been doing every day this week. But what I read last night or through the night sounded like, from a lender perspective, this could happen, very, very quickly in terms of submitting the information, and the SBA is not requiring any deep research or anything on the part of the lender. So you get the borrower to sign off and attest that this is, an act of my whatever, and you're good to go.
Cool. So shall we move on to, some of the other kind of legal considerations and things that are happening, unemployment, et cetera. Nico, would you want to share a little bit about what is the latest that you've learned, or?
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. I don't have a lot of additional information from what I shared 2 weeks ago regarding the medical leave and unemployment, other than at the firm, we've put together some really good Q&A resources that we've put up on our blog for both the loan forgiveness program, or for the loan program, as well as the family medical leave and unemployment under the CARES Act. I can say too that on Wednesday, the regulations were unofficially released regarding the small business exemptions for the paid medical leave and for how those get credited back to businesses. The official publication is set for Monday, April 6th. So on Monday, we'll be able to see for sure what the Department of Labor has put in place. But on the kind of firm work level, we've been working on helping people understand for businesses that have employees that are still working in the facilities, such as food service and grocery stores, on policies that can help support their employees on preventing the further spread or becoming harmed themselves, and then navigating questions regarding like when the application process and how people can apply for unemployment. Unlike under usual circumstances, in these cases, your employees, if you do let them go for a period of time, they can apply for unemployment immediately, and there's no waiting period on that. And they can also apply for certain circumstances if they leave work voluntarily due to COVID-related issues, which are generally pretty specifically related to things like being able to care for a loved one or other things. So even if the small business exemption applies, that employee is not precluded from getting some sort of relief or benefits through the unemployment program as well. So I think it's not a super comprehensive update today, but I can say that we'll have more information being published on the Dunkiel Saunders website as the weeks go on, and we'll be available to speak directly to your concerns. I'm happy to field general questions too.
Thank you, Nico. Any questions from Nico or considerations related to that?
I guess my question is similar to the other question I had, which is if someone's reducing their hours drastically, are they then they're still employed, but so they can't apply for unemployment?
Yeah, they can apply for partial benefits. So long as they have now less than 35 hours of paid employment.
Okay. Do you have a sense, because I've talked to some business owners kind of outside of the co-op world in terms of the questions around, should I lay people off with the sort of supplementary unemployment benefit that comes from that was part of the federal government, the extra $600 or whatever. Does that apply to partial unemployment situations, or is that, do you have any idea?
It does at a prorated amount.
Okay. That's very good to know.
Yeah, the kind of applicant of the unemployment benefits would have to report any income that they're receiving, and so that income would be offset the total amount that they would gain. Mm-hmm. Gain's the wrong word for it. That would replace their regular income.
Right. That makes sense.
So two things for me, Nico. One, the first is just when you referenced about some research that your firm did and everything and made available to the group 2 weeks ago. It thought occurred to me that 2 weeks ago seems like 100 years ago. Might as well have been these days. But it also dawns on me that and I don't have any direct experience with this, but I assume that the Vermont unemployment people are as swamped with inquiries and processing and whatnot as I imagine the SBA is going to be swamped too.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
will slow down the process. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it's slowing down the process. Typically for unemployment, an employer would have to certify the reasons or the application that the former employee puts in. They're waiving that requirement. Eventually they'll get it. So yeah, so an employee can apply. The unemployment process, it typically has like a 1 week waiting period as well. That's been waived. So the idea is really to just get the money out to people who are in need of it as soon as possible.
Great.
And
I
haven't
was
heard of
talking
any
to
slowdowns.
I mean, I was talking to someone who's in the process of applying, and I think it's it's been there's been some experiences of a couple hours, kind of on waiting on the phone, but once she got through, it was very quick.
I've heard that they may be potentially like 2 to 3 weeks backed up in terms of you file, but then you don't necessarily hear back from them for some time. You're not getting a check for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and I don't know if that's true, but I was curious if anyone else knew that was the case. And I was also wondering if we've heard about the $600 federal bonus. Is that already happening? Does the state have that money to give away? Is it real?
I saw a Reddit post where someone got it.
What's that?
I saw a Reddit post where
Oh.
someone got the $600.
Huh.
One of my friends had actually been laid off kind of like a week before all of this really started happening, and had put in for unemployment, and it's been a few weeks at this point, and he's still working on trying to get that. Hasn't seen anything yet, so there's one story for you.
Interrelated with all this, what we're trying to look at is we don't have work for all of our employees. Some are more than full-time, and others are, we're finding a couple hours a day for them to do. And so we're looking at, the PPP program is, paying people, or, I read the VT Digger article that, if you're getting $600 on top of what you'd normally get, like that means most of our employees are going to get paid than we normally pay them if we jump off. And so we're trying to really look at what's best for employees. And, one of the challenges is I think we'd like to keep paying everyone, but then how do we work out the equity issues in the end in terms of like patronage, then like everyone's earned the same thing, but in reality, I'm not sure that's what it is. But I don't think there's any answers to that, but those are the things we're trying to like grapple with.
We've talked about that too internally as a cooperative. This is throwing all models of patronage distribution in complete disarray. It's going to take a lot of thinking on how to make it equitable.
Yeah, well, that might be a topic for. There's going to be a Green Mountain Worker Cooperative Alliance call next week, and that
would be a great topic
to put on the agenda.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
An interesting area for further research on my part too. Yeah.
Other questions for Nico? So one other thing I wanted to throw out quickly was just sort of both in terms of doing another one of these, but other possible kind of virtual co-op community events. One thing that I'm going to try to organize in the next week or two is sort of a remote viewing of documentary called The Take, which is about the Argentine Great Depression around the turn of the millennium, when there was they hit 20-something% unemployment. A lot of businesses were essentially abandoned and then were converted into worker cooperatives. So I think I got permission from the filmmaker to do a screening, virtual screening and discussion. So I'm going to put that out over the weekend, probably for like 2 weeks out or something. So haven't finalized the date on it yet, but we'll soon. Does anyone else have thoughts on what else would be just kind of generally helpful for the co-op community to be doing at this time? Just ideas that have been rattling around your head, just to throw down and think more about them. going forward, but wanted to just hold space open for that.
You know, you mentioned, Matt, how you were pushing your organization's primary event out into August.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me think that, you know, that's happening a lot in my world. We pushed our May annual meeting weekend back into September, not because we purposely chose the middle of September, but because it was all that was available, because of everybody else pushing everything back into the fall and everything. And all of that makes me wonder, as we all sit here talking about this kind of stuff, you know, I hear organizations contemplating this from a perspective of how do I get through the next month, you know, the rest of April into May, let's say. And yet on some of the phone calls that I was on this week, you hear people contemplating, what if we're still having these similar conversations in August, let's say, you know, how is it going to be then? How is it going to be different? You know, the longer this goes on, the greater chance that, you know, some small businesses are going to be harder to resuscitate if we're able to resuscitate them at all. So not a question, and not intended to be a downer for the group either, but there's so many unknowns with
Oh,
all
yeah.
of this.
Well, one thing I will share is I had a conversation with Linda Rossi, who's the state director for the Small Business Development Center, and she shared, first of all, that they've gotten more traffic for their business advisors in the last week than they otherwise would see in a year.
Wow.
And so they're kind of like in triage mode. Normally they'll like spend several hours with a business owner, and now they're more like 15 to 30 minutes, like, all right, let's get the basics, let's point you in the right direction. It sounds like there's going to be a significant amount of funding kind of as part of this bill is going to be in the next few months going into the SBDC network. And so they're also thinking about what does, you know, in the short term, what does that look like? And she was talking even about, you know, maybe this is something where they staff up and a lot of their advisors are towards the end of their career. So they build out essentially like a farm team that once that funding simmers back down, they have the space for that talent to kind of transition to the new generation. But I think there's going to be a lot of need for, you know, just sort of that level of business support where all of these pieces of infrastructure are operating at like 1,000% capacity, whether it's the lending, whether it's the business advising. You know, everyone's just kind of spinning as hard as they can and trying to pump the capacity up as quickly as possible. But there's a huge amount of uncertainty about how much capacity is really going to be needed once we have a sense of where the light at the end of the tunnel is.
Right.
So I think we're coming up on the hour here. So I'm thinking I can put out something again if maybe this is a pattern where 2 weeks from now we can kind of just again have an open invitation and bring people together and check in. Does that feel like a reasonable thing to do, or does anyone have other alternatives to that?
Fine by me.
Cool. So I'll put that out to this sort of ad hoc list I put together, and I'm going to try to formalize that list a little bit more. And I will, you know, anything else that comes up in the meantime, that's worth sharing. Let's see if we can get some sort of flow of that going. But yeah, maybe kind of quick final round of final thoughts, things that have popped in your head there wasn't space to say otherwise, appreciations, whatever feels appropriate to end the call. So are you starting with Andrew?
Hey team, sorry I had to dip out there for a minute. My face is still here, but I was on a phone call for a while. But it's nice to be able to pop in and hear a lot of the information y'all have been digging up, and yeah, it's just good to see co-op community coming together and figuring out how to work through this. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Andrew. Kevin, you want to go next?
Just a quick question. There was a link mentioned before for, I I guess the PPP guidance. You were
Mhm.
saying you were putting it somewhere. Is it somewhere other than in these minutes, or?
So it's in the minutes. I can also sort of, when I send a follow-up
It's
email.
also it's in the chat. So if you bring your mouse
Okay.
to the bottom and you click chat, it's
Okay.
the first or the second thing up there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still learning Zoom, but
We're all gonna be real good at it in a month, right?
I'm sure.
It's the second link.
I got my headset and even a picture now. I had to sort of rewire my computer to get the camera working. So that all happened last weekend. I just want to say thanks, Matt, for keeping this going. I think it's great for solidarity and hearing what other people have to say, and having a chance to bounce questions and ideas. And for sure, 2 weeks, I'll be there.
Cool. Mark, you want to go next?
So I always have to find the unmute button. I don't have anything specific. I think this is just very helpful to see what people's concerns are and sharing information, especially the PPP being foremost on a lot of people's minds this week. So Joe, that was very helpful to hear the information you had. So I just think it's been valuable for us to get together periodically like this. So thanks, Matt.
Great. Michael, you want to go next?
First, thank you all for including Molly in the conversation for a minute or two there. She's way into PPP. Thanks, Matt, for sending out the invite and letting me sit in on the conversation. I'm not yet sure, like all of this, how I will use it, but I'm psyched that I'm understanding kind of what's going on in the world. So thank you, Joe and Nico and Lane, for sharing some of the insights there. We'll see what it is that I'm, in the next 2 weeks, the world will be different again. And so we'll see what it is that I'll be curious about. So thanks.
Great. Jim?
Okay, sorry I was joined the meeting late. I was on another phone call. And thank you for answering my questions. And we are in the process of meeting next week to think about starting a co-op, a food co-op in Bristol. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm into co-ops.
Dave?
Yeah, nothing further to add, but also very grateful to have the opportunity to hear what everyone else is thinking about this and use it to guide our own actions. So thanks again, Matt, for organizing, and everyone for presenting.
Elias?
It's good to hear perspective, everybody from different walks of this. And Matt, thanks for organizing, and Andrew, thanks for taking notes.
Joe?
So like somebody commented, I think at the end of all of this, we will all be Zoom experts. So that's one thing. As Matt well remembers from research that he did for us, credit unions in this country were born in large part out of need during the Great Depression. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I see, in spite of all the headaches and stress and everything we all have during all this process, I see few times where there's so much coming together in cooperation among cooperatives, and for me with regulators and legislators and all kinds of different sectors and all people from walks of life to help us all get through this process. And it's just really heartening amidst all the chaos to see so many people working and focused in the same direction for the same results. So that's great, and this is part of it. So thank you, Matt, for organizing this.
Nico?
Oh, I'm really grateful to be part of this community, and I really love co-ops, so I'm glad to be able to serve and help see cooperatives stay strong in these challenging times.
And I'll finish us off with yeah, just an appreciation for all of you, and that we're working together on this. And also one little piece of Zoom foo is for the for folks who are less experienced with it. If you're muted and you hold down the space bar, you'll be unmuted for as long as your space bar is held down, and then you're muted again like this. There we go. So we're all learning. All right. Well, so I will send out the follow-up email with the link for the next meeting and with the link to the notes, and keep on trucking until then. And good to see you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye,
See ya.
everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Cheers.